Hey everyone, it's Allie and welcome to my channel, and today I am super excited to talk to you guys about the 12 books I read during the months of March and April. Alright, so looking back at these 2 months, I was honestly surprised that I read 12 books, because if you have been following my channel, if you've seen my last 10 videos, you know that I have recently moved from Columbus, Ohio to Charleston area, South Carolina, and the months of March and April were literally when we moved, so it's been so crazy both of these 2 months. But I found myself in our downtime, I really was feeling like reading rather than watching TV or movies or doing much else, honestly. Reading was absolutely my #1 hobby over the last couple of months. But let's go ahead and talk about these books that I've read. And looking at this stack, there were some real wins. There were a couple minor disappointments, but I feel like I'm getting better about picking up books that I have a strong feeling I'm gonna like. There are too many books, life's too short to read books that you are quite sure from the beginning that you are not going to like. So yeah, just a reminder that you don't have to read everything that Book Talk is telling you to read. The first thing I read was a reread, and that is The Secret of Platform 13. This was talked about in my middle grade recommendations video. This, as you can tell, this exact copy was very well loved by me when I was in middle school, I would say especially. I probably read this 15 plus times when I was that age. And as I mentioned in that video, I do want to reread a lot of not just books in general, because I do think it's so easy for us to get caught up in new, because there are, it seems, an infinite amount of new books to read. But I think it is very relaxing to reread books that were your favorite when you were a kid. It was 5 stars when I was a kid. I give it 5 stars now. I just think it's absolutely amazing. I love everything about this book. It is a Narnia-esque kind of story. There is our world, and then there's another one. There are magical creatures, there's a quest, and I just really personally love those kind of stories. So this still has checked all the boxes for me, and I honestly think anyone at any age could really enjoy this story. And next up, I read another 5-star read. This is Shark Heart, A Love Story, and I actually picked this book up because I did a video where I read 4 out of 5, I think, of the Book of the Month 2023 Book of the Year finalists, and this book did not win the overall Book of the Year, but spoiler, this is the one that I would have picked to win Book of the Year because I just thought it was so unique, it was so well written, and I would highly recommend it, of course, giving it 5 stars. I was a little bit nervous at first because this book is kind of like your family member gets diagnosed with a terminal illness, coming to terms with that. There is a lot of grief that is talked about and dealt with in this story, but in this alternate universe, people get diseases that gradually turn them into an animal. So there's a lot of humor in this book. And instead of the very depressing kind of cancer diagnosis that can be in a lot of these books, one of the main characters is slowly becoming a shark. So it's very interesting. I think it is one that people might not like. I'll just put that out there. But I think if you get through the story, you'll look back and think wow, this was a really cool, really unique, well-written book. And I'm glad I made that video because I don't think I would have picked this book up otherwise, just because it says a love story. I'm not really a romance girly, but this was much more than a romance. I would say that was a very minor part of it. So if you're looking for something different, something interesting, I would recommend picking this book up. Okay, next, another one that I actually did already donate. I didn't realize it, but that is Yours Truly. And again, this is not a book that I would have typically picked up, but I picked it up because of that Book of the Year video. And this book, Yours Truly, actually did win Book of the Year. Many people love the rom-com genre, and I will absolutely say I do think this is a very solid book in that category, but it is one of my least favorite genres myself. So I did end up giving it a 3.5, but I can absolutely understand why so many people liked it, and I know a lot of people are very happily reading the 3rd book in the series this summer. So if you do love rom-coms, I would pick it up, but if you don't really care, like me, I wouldn't really worry about skipping it. Next up, we've got kind of a random one. This is one that my mom gave to me. I think it was on my sister's bookshelf, so Steffi, if you're watching, you can have this back if you would like it, but this is Lucy Clark Will Not Apologize by Margot Rabb, and I will say that the cover is, to me, the best thing about this particular book. It is Super anthro, super cute. I love the cover. And I did like the idea of this story. It's about this girl who's like in this boarding school, but it's a very short part of the book, and I love like a boarding school setting. But she's taken out of that for reasons I will not say, and she's sent to New York, and she befriends this old lady, which I also love. I love a girl befriending an old lady in a story. And there's a mystery going on. So there are a lot of things about this that I feel like if maybe it was written a little bit differently, I would have given it 4.55 stars. But ultimately, this was one of my least favorite books that I've read so far this year. I did give it 3 stars, which is basically like other people's 1 stars. I really don't give books less than 3 stars. I just feel like there were a lot of issues with the story. I was not really interested as I was reading it. So I would not really recommend this personally, and I will say that the average Goodreads review is a 3.74, so of course people did enjoy this. But yeah, not a personal favorite for me. But then I did read a thriller to kind of get me out of the reading slump that I was falling into, and it was very good in my opinion, and that is The Golden Couple. And this is actually written by 2 different authors, which I think sometimes works very, very well. I like the premise of this because there is a therapist in it, and that is my background. So I feel like books either do that very well or not well at all, and I liked how they did it in this one. But as the title suggests, there is a golden couple, like a perfect seeming couple, and they go to therapy. So the book is following the wife's point of view as well as the therapist, and of course, typical thriller, you're finding out stuff about both of them throughout the story. This book did not have like the most mind-blowing twist ever, but it was quite well written and I was interested throughout. I like totally ate this book up. I read it pretty quickly. But 4.5 stars from me. I'm for sure going to be looking up more from these authors together as well as separately. I think they do both write separately. And as you can see, I did get this from Book of the Month. It looks like it originally came out in February 2022, but you can probably get it as an add-on. Okay, next up we have a book that has been on my list for a while. I suspected it would be 5 stars. I did give it 5 stars, but I was really nervous to read it, and that is The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. And I think this author only has like 2 books out. She wrote The Night Circus, which I have read, and I think I might have given that like a 4.5. And yeah, then we do have this Starless Sea, and this is a very, very epic story. It took me probably like 4 or 5 days to get through, but I really enjoyed it a lot. So yeah, I did give it 5 stars. I wouldn't say it's like a new favorite book of all time type situation 5 stars. I would highly recommend it if you like magical realism, if you like a solid story where there are a lot of details. Another reason I really like this book is because it's told in multiple ways. Like there are a couple books within the book, which I think is really fun. And there is a lot going on. There are a lot of details, but it all makes sense if you pay attention. So we've got another solid 5-star read here. If you've been putting this off like I was, I would really highly recommend making it a priority. Here we have Ruth Ware's 0 Days. This is maybe her newest book out right now. I think she's got another one maybe even coming out this month of May, but this came out last summer. And I said in my review, I think this is my least favorite that I've read from this author so far. I've maybe read like 3 or 4 books from her. This is not like a super twisty thriller type of book, more like a slow burn mystery. And normally I don't mind that too much at all, but I just was not super interested in this particular story, so I ended up giving it a 3.5. So at the very beginning of this story, the main character, Jack, who is a girl, she and her husband, they both work with companies to test their security systems. So in the opening scene, she is doing a job with her husband. She is trying to break into a company and her husband is doing like the hacking side back at their house. And when she gets home, she finds that her husband has been murdered. And all these clues are coming out to the police that are making it look like the main character, Jack, has committed the murder. So throughout the book, she is trying to figure out who has murdered her husband because she knows it's not her. And yeah, I don't know. I just like was not super interested in this story. I was not really blown away by the ending, but I do think that this would actually be like a really good mini series because there was a lot of like running from the police scenes and things like that that I don't know, I think it just would work better visually. So if you read this one, let me know what you think, but yeah, just not like the most intense thriller, I would say. Next up, another one that was a slight disappointment, but I did end up enjoying it a lot by the end, and that is What the River Knows, another one that I did get from Book of the Month. And this is part of a duology. This came out like last November, and I think the second book is coming out this fall. So I do like now how authors are just like cranking these books out. So if you're really into one part of a series, you're probably gonna get the next part pretty soon. I was really excited about this one because it is very much like an adventure story. It is advertised as kind of like a mummy-esque story. So in this book, the main character is from Argentina, but her two parents did a lot of work in Egypt. They spent like the majority of the year in Egypt. And at the beginning of the story, she finds out that both her parents are dead. So she decides to sneak away from her aunt and her cousins who she lives with, and she travels on a boat and she meets up with her uncle who worked with her parents in Egypt. When the main character is in Egypt, she is looking for clues about what happened to her parents. She's helping out on dig sites. So again, kind of like the last book, I think this would be maybe a really good miniseries. It would be very good visually, but I just found the main character a little bit annoying. I did really like actually like the love interest. I did really enjoy their banter. I thought that was well done. And by the end of the book, I was interested enough to want to read the second one when it comes out. The first half did have me dragging a little bit though, but this is another gorgeous, gorgeous cover. And I was thinking 3 to 3.5 at the beginning of the book, honestly, but by the end, I did bump it up to 4 stars. Now we've got one of the books that I was most excited to pick up this year, and that is The Reappearance of Rachel Price by one of my favorites, Holly Jackson. So as the name suggests, this book is about somebody who reappears, but when it happened in the book, I was like so shocked. I actually did do a reading vlog about this story, so I will go ahead and link it up above if you want to see my reactions as I am working through the story. I don't know if I did love it as much as A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. It's hard to compare because that was of course a trilogy and this is just a standalone novel, but this was 5 stars from me. I don't know what it is, but there's something about Holly Jackson's writing style that I just find so addicting. I want to get through the book so quickly, and I did end up reading this one quite quickly once I really sat down and got into it. But the gist of the story is that there is a 17-year-old, 18-year-old girl, I think 18, and her mom disappeared when she was 2 years old, and people don't know if she's dead, people don't know if she just ran away or what happens. But pretty early on in the story, her mom actually does reappear. Her mom is Rachel Price. But the main character doesn't quite trust what her mom is saying, so she kind of goes into detective mode. And there are, of course, other twists and turns that come out, and I was surprised, I will say, by the ending of the book. So if you liked A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, or if you just like YA thrillers in general, I would highly recommend picking this one up. Again, one you can get from Book of the Month. Like the Starless Sea, next up we have another one that was sitting on my shelf for a long time and I just procrastinated reading it for some reason, and that is Gallant by V.E. Schwab. This author is the one who wrote The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, which is sitting on my shelf over here, which means I have not read it yet. It's another one like this one, like Starless Sea, that I'm like nervous to pick it up because it's so hyped, I feel like. But I do really think I will like that story. I'm imagining I will like that one better than Gallant. This one I did give 4 stars to. I thought the writing was very, very strong. The book definitely gave very strong like Coraline vibes, Starling House vibes. This would be a good one to read during fall, I would say for sure. It also is a pretty quick read, and there's like a journal within the book, so all these like gray pages, they don't have very many words on them. So this was not my favorite type of story personally, but yeah, if you like a light horror, I would recommend this one. Very much dark academia if that is your thing. Okay, second to last book was one I was really looking forward to, and that is The Women by Kristen Hanna. Kristen Hanna can be quite hit or miss for me. I don't love a lot of her earlier books, like her more chick lit books. That's probably my least favorite genre, is just straight up chick lit. But I do really, really like most of her historical fiction books, and I would say like The Four Winds and The Winter Garden and The Great Alone. These are some of my favorite books of all time. So I did have quite high expectations for The Women, which follows a 21-year-old girl, and her brother decides to enlist for the Vietnam War, and she is inspired to become a nurse. So she goes over to Vietnam and she serves as a nurse, and the book is split into like two parts. So the first part of the book is her overseas at war, and then the second part of the book is following the main character after she's left the war and she's back home in California. And I think this book is very enlightening to how not only women were treated, but just how people who served in the military during this war were treated when they came back home. And especially as a woman, people did not take her trauma seriously because she wasn't like actually fighting. So I would recommend the book. I do really like the story overall, but yeah, I didn't love the main character. She makes a lot of decisions that are cringy and definitely go against my moral code, but I did feel a lot of empathy for her and the struggles that she went through as a result of the trauma she experienced from being in war. So I gave this a 3.75. It for sure did not crack the top 3 favorites from Kristen and Hannah for me, but this is getting a lot of very positive reviews. A lot of people are liking it. I just, again, didn't love the main character. I thought there was a bit too much shoved into the book. There is a lot that is happening, and I didn't really feel like there was enough development of some of the side characters, especially some of like the love interest characters. So when things happened, I didn't necessarily feel very strongly about them. But as of now, after this book has been out for probably 6 weeks or so, it does have a 4.67 on Goodreads. So again, a lot of people are really, really loving this book, and I would for sure recommend this author in general. But we did end the month with an absolute banger. I loved this book. This is Lisa Jewell's Invisible Girl. I did make a vlog reading this book, so I will go ahead and link that up above. But this is actually only the second Lisa Jewell book I've read, and I love that there are so many more that I have to get through because I am really, really loving this author. I did give this 4.5 stars. Another day I might have given it 5 stars. I just felt like I didn't like this quite as much as None of This Is True, which I did read last year. But this story is told from multiple perspectives and all the people are connected in some way. So we've got the classic wife who is like living in suburbia and there's stuff going on that she doesn't know about in her own family. And then there is a girl who does go missing, the invisible girl. And then we also have the view of a creepy guy who you don't quite know if he is the one who did something to this girl, if he did other things that he's being accused of. This book totally had me hooked the whole way throughout. It does read a little bit slower for a thriller in certain ways, like there's a lot more internal dialogue than like super action-packed scenes, but it's so well written and I just found myself gobbling this book up. I read it as fast as I could, and I did say in my reading vlog of it that it felt like a Kate Atkinson novel, so if you're familiar with her writing style, I felt like it was like a Kate Atkinson light novel because she gets really, really into the internal dialogue and character development. So for me, this was a 4.5, but from other people's reviews, they said it was a little bit too slow paced. So that's just something to know going into it. But all right, everybody, those were all of the books I read during the months of March and April. Overall, very solid months of reading, and I am very eager to get to the ones that I have picked out for May. But if you like this video, please make sure to give me a big thumbs up and subscribe. It really does help my channel out a lot. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!